Okay. Hello, hello. All right. Coach Lisa here. This is the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group. My name is Coach Lisa, and we are here today to talk to you about food being your love language. And so we want to be able to talk to yourself with a different voice, because sometimes our telling ourselves that food is like amazing and romantic and it's sweet and it's our comfort, it's our friend, it's our savior, and it's the thing that we use when we're lonely, and we use when we're sad, and we use when we're happy, and food becomes this be all and end all, and we put food at a very romantic place in our minds. And so today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about food being your love language, and we're going to talk about allowing yourself to kind of break that barrier between food being this beautiful, romantic, amazing thing, which it can be, and using it on the flip side of that to hurt yourself. And we kind of have both going on here because we are the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group. We recognize that all of the women that are in this community are also struggling with emotional eating. So there might be some memories in your mind, and I'm going to share some stories today, where food became this absolute saving grace for you. And maybe it's still that way in your life today. So I know for me, it kind of started in my mind when I was little, and I remember eating cheese, and I used to nibble on it. And my dad, who died when I was only 8 years old, he used to call me Mousy. So it was this endearing little thing. It was like, oh, look at me eating my little cheese, and it felt good. And then there was, of course, the times when we had this bagel truck that came into our neighborhood. And I'll never forget, in the winter time, it was probably, December or so, in upstate New York, where I'm from, Monroe, New York, where the bagel truck would come around and he would ring a little bell, just like the ice cream truck. And all of the kids in the neighborhood would come out in their pajamas and their galoshes and their coats and stuff. And they would get all their parents' bagels. It would be on a Sunday morning. And that always would end up with me having a donut. It was chocolate donut with frosting, and I just loved it, right? And so these are like fond memories that I've built up over the years. I was Jewish, so we didn't celebrate Easter, but my mother always got me an Easter bunny, solid, rock solid, chocolate bunny, and I would gnaw on it for like hours. And there's a lot of different family events, of course, in different religions, different traditions, different backgrounds, whatever, that come along with food, whether you're Italian or Greek, or it doesn't matter. There's food everywhere. And a lot of that food does come with beautiful and fond and the most gracious memories in our minds, right? They represent love. And so it's not surprising that you might say that food is your love language. It's what you do when you're happy. It's what you do when you're sad. It's what you do when you're angry. And there's a lot of different components of truth to this. And so please know that there are two sides of this coin. There is the love side of food and the smells and the aromas. And I remember playing with my food when I was a kid. Do you? I used to have these little games that I played, and I would specifically put, even if I was eating M&Ms, honestly, I loved to play with my food. I would line them up in little rows, and the blue M&Ms, and I would almost call them out in my mind, like, we need a green M&M here. And I would go get it, and it would kind of march its way into my mouth. I could take literally an hour to eat a packet of M&Ms when I was a kid. But as food flipped a switch in my mind, and there was still this good feeling about it, and this kind of, great thing. I know when I was even a teenager, my mom always had baked ziti, and, I would come home 11 o'clock, midnight or whatever. And man, oh man, that baked ziti and Diet Coke was like the best ever. And yet at the same time, over the years, food became something else. And so even though there was this fond memory of it, and this amazing fond memory of it, somehow or another, I had to push that away, because if I continued to eat all of that delicious, delectable, whatever, then it made me feel like I then needed to lose weight. And so then I locked myself down on the diet. And I did this for years, and I mean years and years and years, just on the diets, on the diets, on the diets. And then because I felt like I was such a prisoner, like literally a prisoner, that when I did give myself a little latch, a little let myself out of jail free for the weekend, and I was in love with food, food was a love language for me. I went ahead to the flip side of that, and then I was just like eating everything in sight. And so it doesn't matter whether you're dieting and binging, or whether you're just on a daily basis using food in a way that causes you to feel a certain comfort within yourself. But what we tend to do is we tend to romanticize the words and actually tell ourselves that food is equaling comfort. It's equaling love. It's equaling support. It's equaling our wholeness. And it's actually bringing us back to ourselves when we've had a stressful day, when we've had a difficult conversation, when we've had something that makes us feel bad about ourselves, or maybe it helps to drown out the voices that are going on inside of our head that are talking to us in a not so nice way. And yet, taking that all into a perspective where on the flip side of that love, that feeling, that goodness, what we end up having is a lot of self-hate, a lot of fear, a lot of, the opposite of good. and a lot of times what ends up replacing this, this happiness with is we end up kind of trying to stamp out boredom, right? The opposite of happiness is not sadness, it's boredom. And so when we are in this place and now we're kind of filling our space, numbing, distracting, whatever, ourselves with this food, but then at the same time, we're keeping all of our beautiful, fond, loving, romantic memories about what food meant to us as children. And I know that I coach gals from all over the globe where there's a different story attached to food in every which way. And it could be, I was told to clean everything off my plate, or I was, I had a grandmother that lived with us, and every day when I came home, like she had the food sitting there, or maybe it was like my mother worked a lot and she felt so guilty about working a lot that like we constantly were like going out and getting stuff to eat, or maybe it was family dinners in front of the television, or honestly, maybe there wasn't enough food. Maybe you come from a background where food was definitely like you went to bed hungry a lot. And so when you got food, it was like game on. And it became this emotional feeling to you and this tie-in. And a lot of it does tie into love. And so being able to kind of widen this scope and being able to see it through a different lens and being able to continue to take the parts of it that feel good. Like I know when I would go to my grandmother's during the summers, and I lived in New York, so I would fly by myself at like 9 years old, 10 years old to Florida. And here I live in Florida now, but I would sit in my grandmother would make me cookies, and she had those Auntie's candies in the refrigerator like all the time. And there was an element of like excitement, and it's like, wow, this is it. But at the same time, if those memories are somehow or another contaminating the truth, what you use food for now, and there's this like subtle blend of beauty and aroma and culture and all of that stuff mixed with this like yucky stuff where it's like, it's like, well, now my mom used to give me this to quiet me down if I was crying. And so now we tend to take some of those beautiful stories and we tend to use them as blames as to why we're struggling in this situation now. And so being able to open up some new headspace for this, being able to take those beautiful stories, the love that food represents to you, to us, to everybody, really it does. It's everybody, right? This is natural. Like we have to eat to survive. And yet at the same time, taking some of that beauty and that love and squashing that out with like, okay, well now the only way that I can get love is through food. That doesn't work. So I'm going to give you some different things to think about today, because I want you to be able to no longer look at this food as being the only way to look at love, right? Or to have that be your love language. Keep your memories, keep them in a beautiful space tucked within your whole heart. Don't separate pieces of your heart that may have gotten broken at one point in your life, and then keep those pieces kind of locked down to where then you are using this very same thing that was beautiful or purposeful from the past and taking it and hurting yourself with today, because those two things don't go together. We can't do both. So I'm going to quote something from Doreen Virtue. Now, her teachings are somewhat, she has a book called Constant Cravings, and I teach this very minimally in my program, Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System. But I will include it in here today. I take everything that I read with a very open mind, and some of Doreen's work I really appreciate and I want to share with you today. Some of it can be limiting to certain types of rules and things that she feels are important to have a structure in the way that you're thinking about things. And in self-discovery, we are more open-minded without rules, without kind of locking us down to a pattern of what we have to do. So I take a little bit of pieces of things that I feel are open and are useful and purposeful, and I share them with you. And that is where we go. So Doreen Virtue, in her book, Constant Cravings, she tells us about 4 reasons why we use food to fuel our pain. And the reason why I bring this up is because when you speak the language of love by using food, that's one way, right? That's the love. But on the other side of that, when you're also now taking the same thing that you're telling yourself was once this beautiful, loving thing, and now you're actually using it in a different way, and it's causing you pain, it's causing you to hurt yourself, it's causing you to do things where you're using food that once felt like a beauty to you, and you're using food to hurt yourself, because now the very same thing that you might have experienced when you were a child, you know, like being fed for when you were sad or whatever. I mean, that was a nice thing. It was a nice gesture, or it felt good at the time. But now what it might have done is it might have caused you to disconnect in some way from recognizing how important feeling your feelings is. And so if we don't feel our feelings, we keep ourselves locked in pain, and then we end up using whatever we're using. Now we're talking about food because we're in a women's emotional eating group, but we could be in an alcohol group, we could be in a drug group, we could be in anything really. It's just whatever you're using, right? So we're going to talk about food. But if the pain is there and you're using the food in some way to comfort yourself, but at the same time, comforting yourself becomes uncomfortable. So now you're using the food to fuel your pain, to actually fuel it. Like it's like a little fire. And just when you feel a little bit better, something happens, snap. And then you've got to plow the food on to, you know, push the fire into a bigger space, right? And you want to be able to fuel it. So when we think about it like that, and changing our mindset on the language that food represents to us within love, being able to change that language, Doreen says 4 reasons why we use food to fuel our pain. She has a little acronym that's FATS, F-A-T-S. You can write this down. F stands for fear, A stands for anger, T stands for tension, S stands for shame. So she says fear is insecurity, walking in eggshells, generalized fear, abandonment fears, existential fears, control issues, sexual fears, worry, anxiety, depression, and intimacy fears. Anger is towards another person, or towards an injustice, or towards a self feeling betrayed or ripped off, feeling abused. Tension is stress, frustration, old anger turned into bitterness or resentment, jealousy, impatience, overwork without an emotional release such as fun, or shame. self-blame, low self-esteem, self-loathing, lack of trust in one's own competence or goodness, assuming other people won't like you, feeling less than others, feeling like you don't deserve good. So think about those four things, FATS, fear, anger, tension, and shame, and see, is how you're using food within the realm of that definition, right? Because we can't have both. Sometimes we will convince ourselves, we'll say like, wow, food was amazing. And my grandmother made this. And like, well, what am I supposed to do? I come from an Italian background and food is like how we talk about love. And that's amazing. But at the same time, in the present, if we're using food and it's all love, then what's the problem? The point is that there is actually a problem. And so we can no longer have both. We can't speak two languages and have them like heard in the same exact way, right? Because on one hand, you might be thinking to yourself, well, food is love and this is great. And my family did this and that and all that stuff. But then in today, it's not the same thing. And if it is, it would be okay. But it's not, because somewhere along the line, the decisions to use food is fueling the fear, the anger, the tension, and the shame, right? The fear, anger, tension, and shame. And so Doreen suggests, and I do as well, in our coaching program, Crush That Food Thing, we help you to identify your invisible emotional relationship with food. We help you to get out of your own way by really widening the scope of what you're looking at. So if you're just going to keep one dialogue in your head, like food is love and this is amazing, but then at the same time, the food that you're eating today, that you're consuming today, in the way that you're eating it today, is absolutely the opposite of love, then we have to be able to see what's underneath that. And sometimes what's underneath it is invisible, like you can't find it yourself. And so self-discovery allows you to get curious so that you can ask yourself the questions that you will need to ask yourself so that you can zoom out and be able to put things into a different perspective. So Doreen suggests that we replace the word facts, F-A-T-S, with feelings that come from inside of yourself. So self-love. So no longer are we looking at food as being love and the language of food as being love. We're actually tapping into more of an uncharted territory to be able to see ourselves through a wider lens and to be able to ask ourselves, like, where am I getting stuck using food to give myself love and comfort, but where am I missing it on a different scale? Like, what's going on the inside that's causing me to feel, maybe sad or lonely or hurt or guilty, or, the tension or the stress of the real world out there, right? So what's all that about, and what's missing from the inside? So she suggests to use an affirmation, and I'll just share it with you. She says, affirm this over and over and over. I forgive, accept, and trust myself. I forgive, accept, and trust myself. So if you start using this affirmation every day, I forgive, accept, trust myself. I forgive, accept, and trust myself. And you just keep saying it over and over. Write it down on a piece of paper because you will forget what it is. That's the way this goes. We have to be able to continually remind ourselves to be able to open up our mindset and to be able to look at things through a wider lens. And so today, I want you to write that down and start saying it. Start affirming. Start telling yourself, I forgive, accept, and trust myself. And then you can start to hone in on speaking a different language to yourself. And no longer is food love, you are love. And when you're feeling that love with yourself, you can add in different experiences that might have food in them that also will continue to give yourself that loving feeling with yourself. Like maybe you and a grandchild or a child, make a homemade cake. And so you guys lick the batter and the spoons and it's fun and it's great. And but you don't sit there and eat the whole cake and then tell yourself that that's love. Like, that's not love, right? That's more self-loathing. So we're going to give you just a different language to speak to yourself, and then we'll move on from there. All right. Again, my name is Lisa Callahan. I am the coach of the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group, and I have a wonderful coaching community also of a it's called Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, where I help women to identify their invisible emotional relationship with food. Bye now.